So, hello guys, welcome back to Mixing Cultures podcast. This is
Welcome back. Welcome back.
episode 6, right? Episode 6.
Yes.
Okay. So, today, I was going through our Mixing Cultures podcast
It's
Instagram.
shared.
And there was a question that was asked by one of the listeners, and they had asked, how comfortable are you writing and speaking in Korean? Except when it comes to communicating with your family members, did you ever make time to learn Korean while growing up? Was it hard for you? I thought we would kind of take this question into context, but switch it to more about languages in general.
Mm-hmm.
Because for us, English is our first language, but we do speak Korean and we do speak a bit of Mandarin.
Yeah.
I feel like you're kind of shy with your Mandarin because I feel like if you tried, you can't speak, but you don't want to try because you feel like you're not as good.
Yeah, and also the experience I've had behind learning that language is also, for me, I'm pretty sure at that time I found it was really depressing. So I linked that emotion with that language, so I don't really like it. I think that's also a big part of it. But I do also feel really embarrassed when I'm trying to learn a new language and speak it, especially to people that I know, like the family. Because it's better that I can speak with strangers, because even if they judge me, I'm never going to see them again, so it's fine. Yeah. But if I speak it to friends or family, you're going to come back to them, and I feel like they're always going to have this little mental judgment of your skill and capacity.
Yeah.
And that's what scares me when I talk to people I know.
But I feel like family members wouldn't judge you.
I feel like they're more open to judging you because you're family.
That's true. But our family normally isn't.
Yeah,
like
but
that.
I think that's like kind of the basis of why I don't like to speak it.
Yeah. We did touch up on this a little bit when we were talking about the episode when we grew up in Canada, but then we can just touch base on it because both of us are much more comfortable speaking English.
Yeah.
Except when I'm arguing. When I'm arguing, I feel like I have to speak in Korean for some reason because I can't think that fast.
Well, I feel like the only time I really use Korean is if I have to speak with family.
Yeah.
Because majority of the family that we have don't speak, even if they speak English, it's not fluent.
Yeah.
So in that case, I speak Korean. Like, I speak Korean to my aunts and my uncles, my cousins, and my our grandparents.
Yeah.
But to like either Sophia, then I'll just speak to her in English and I won't speak to her in Korean.
To our mom, we kind of mix it.
Yeah, because mom knows she can understand majority of English. So sometimes when my brain can't process something as fast and I just say it in English, she'll understand it perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But majority of other people I do speak Korean with.
I really don't have time to speak Korean here. The only time I speak Korean is when I'm talking to mom.
Yeah.
Because I don't know any Korean people here. So
I don't speak either, to be honest.
I speak English. But because I don't want to, you would think that you would not forget your mother tongue. But after you don't speak it for a while, when you try to say something, you have to like think in your head if that makes sense first before you say it out loud.
Yeah, that's why I always try to at least like watch something or listen to something that has Korean so I can constantly, use that part of my brain that knows Korean so I don't forget it completely.
Yeah, me too.
Because I remember I learned Korean like to be a bit more fluent in it when I was living in China as well. So I picked it up a lot later, I think.
Ironically, your Korean got better in China.
I know. Because I told this in the Coming to Canada episode, I think, where mom tried to teach me and then she gave up.
Yeah.
So basically, I knew just enough where if mom would say, come eat dinner or whatever, like basic stuff I would understand. But I would not be able to, maybe understand Korean humor or have like a full-on conversation. Like that's not the level that my Korean was at.
To be fair, mom has a really short temper. So the moment she thinks that we don't understand or can't keep up with what she says, she completely explodes. And she's like, why can't you understand it? Especially when she used to teach me math. And she'd be like, why don't you understand this? And I'm like, I don't know. And then she'd like completely blow up. Remember? Okay, off topic. Remember when she used to try to teach you about time? Like the
Oh
concept
yeah,
of
that when you
adding
subtract
time
it.
and
Yeah.
subtracting time. Sally,
I was like, why isn't it 100?
like Sally is smart, but when she was learning about time, she just did not get it, and mom almost like blew the roof of our house. But for me, I don't get shapes
Shapes.
and
3D shapes,
3D
to be
shapes.
specific.
So you know how when they ask you to like cut open a 3D shape and make like a surface, like a
Like a layout plan, like when
like
you
a
fold it
layout
all
plan,
out.
and I'm like, how do you do that? I can't do it. If
Like
you don't
mom would literally make the models and
no,
cut it and lay it out.
mom would buy those cookie boxes. Like she'd have boxes of like cookies at home. She
Yeah.
would cut those up to show me because if you didn't physically show me, I would not get it. Like my brain is like pitch black. Like she'd be like try to draw it out. I'm like, how?
Yeah,
And
because
then
there's some, like, this is a specific, I don't know if it's a Korean math problem, but they would show you a pile of blocks and say how many blocks are there.
the one that's
And you
stacked
have to
up.
understand that's underneath, that's holding the block up. Like, one block's not just floating up in space. Like, something has to be supporting it underneath.
Yeah.
And Sophia just wouldn't click that. She would
It's
just
like
count the
it's like
boxes
those
she could
pyramid,
see.
like those pyramid shapes, and then they'd be like, "How many blocks are there in total?" And I just count the ones that I would see, and mom would like slap me on the back of my head, and then she'd be like, "No, there's ones
And
underneath."
she'd always say, how are the blocks floating? And you're like, but that's what I can see.
They asked in the question, "How many blocks are there?" I'm gonna see the one. Like it did not click to me later on that you have to count the blocks that were holding it, but 3D shapes were not my forte. No. Time was not Sally's
Yeah.
forte. 3D shapes were not my
No.
forte, which is why I think after we got a bit older, my mom started to stop trying to teach us extra stuff outside of school, like on her own, without like third party like school like academy help. She kind of
Yeah.
like gave up because I think she thought she'd die from high blood pressure if she continued.
Well, imagine teaching kids that. That's so annoying. Like, I don't even want to teach myself something right now, let alone trying to get someone else to understand.
No, but after we started to go to like high school math, like she started to not teach us math because I don't think she remembered, to be honest.
I learned math until I was living in China.
Yeah. But then before you got to China, you weren't doing like sine, cosine, or like that kind of like algebra stuff. It was just still math. You know how long I did not use math? I was watching like this Korean TV program, and then they asked,
Oh no.
"What is 2 to the power of -2?" And in my head, I'm like, "What is 2 to the power of -2?" Like I could not figure it out in my head. Like I could not figure it out until in the end. I think it was 1/4. Is the answer?
Yeah, because negative just put it as a fraction.
Yeah, but then in my brain, I'm like, what? There's a negative exponents? Like I could not figure it out yesterday.
There's fraction exponents, right? Because there's
I
2
was-
to the power 1/2, which is square root.
No, I don't know that.
So, you know, if you do like 4 to the power of 1/2,
Yeah, is that like the square root of 4?
it's a square root of 4.
Then
so
why
it's
don't
2.
you just write square root of 4? Why do
I'm
you...
saying it's the same thing.
Can you have like a 4 to the power of 1/4?
Yeah, because you can put different numerical values in
that
front
be
of the
1?
square root. Wait, say that question again.
4 to the power of 1/4.
No,
No, would that be
because I don't.
Wait, what? Sorry.
No, it's square root, so the number has to get smaller.
Oh.
It's like a decimal, like it's 1 point something probably. Because it has to be the same number times it, right? So 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 does not equal 4, so it's not 1. So it's like a decimal, like 1 point something. But if you have a fraction exponent, then it's
I don't think I ever did fraction of exponents, to be fair.
You did. You just forgot.
If you don't work in a job where you need math, all you need to do is learn how to calculate sales at the supermarket, okay? That's like basically all you need math for.
But what I was saying was the reason why learning Chinese was different than learning English was we weren't learning it when we were like a child. We were learning
older.
it more when we were teenagers. So it was different because your brains can't process as much information than when you're like a newborn like baby, you know?
Yeah.
So both of us probably had more difficulty learning Chinese than to learn English. And also Chinese is a very difficult language to learn. So that didn't
Yeah.
help on top of us being older when we learned it.
Because Chinese has the pronunciation, which is the pinyin, which is written in English, which is quite new. It was generally new in China. And then they have the actual character itself, which you have to write out, which does not sound like the letter that you're pairing it.
Yeah, so the pinyin is made with English alphabets, and that's how you would type Chinese onto a computer. So each character would have their pronunciation, and you type it, and they would give you like a list of potential characters that you would want to use, because you don't put the tones when you're typing on the computer.
Mm-hmm.
So the computer will kind of formulate what you're trying to say based on the characters you're putting in English, and then they'll give you like an approximation.
The more pinging sounds that you put in the computer, the more the computer can calculate which words that you are trying to speak.
Yeah, because you're not gonna be like me, moon, pear, cat. Like I'm just saying random characters, but that wouldn't be like a sentence. They would probably know what you're trying to say, and they would give you the correct characters.
I have friends right now here that are Chinese that I try to speak Chinese to, because I really do not want to forget Chinese.
Oh, well, too late for me.
Yeah, so I try to speak Chinese as much as I can for me. And I do watch Korean programs and stuff like that when I am like at home on my own, so that I'm constantly listening to some sort of Korean.
Yeah.
But Chinese was hard for me too, just because it was completely different than any other language that we've learned. We didn't have...
It's completely based on memorization. You just have to remember everything.
And it's not something that you grow up with, or we grew up with as a child. It's something we just had to go straight, just hardcore memorization.
Yeah, because it's not like our family speaks the language as well. So once you leave school, you don't hear it. So you basically have to remember everything you learned in school and try to remember it when you get back home.
Yeah, so it was hard, but I pick up languages faster than Sally, which is why I was able to speak it faster and I'm able to remember it longer. Just because Sally, I think, has more of like a sciencey brain, and I have a non-sciencey.
Mine's not language bias.
Yeah, and I'm a non-sciencey brain.
Yeah, so what also didn't help with me learning Chinese was I remember, so right before I went to China, so I went to China when I started grade 7. In grade 5, near the end, I applied to be a student in late French immersion in Canada. So I got into late French immersion in grade 6. So that's when you kind of catch up. So the French that normal kids would learn from grade 1 to 3, I would have to learn in 1 year of late French immersion. So I'm already learning a new language. They're still taught in school, but not to the extent of how much you're put in. Because you had to now write in French, do math in French and everything in French. And then in 7th grade, the semesters in China was the same in Canada, where they started in September. But I got to China a month late. I don't know the reason why, I can't remember. But I got to China in October. Because I remember it was the first time I ever spent my birthday in Korea, because I got a birthday cake. So I went to China in October. So since classes already started in September, the kids already knew how to read and write the pronunciation, the pinyin, and they were now starting to memorize the characters that go along with those sounds. But for me, I don't even know what the pronunciation pinyin was. I don't even know the Chinese characters. So when they were learning the Chinese characters, I had to learn that, but also force myself or teach myself the pronunciation, because the teachers didn't have enough time to take out of their class to teach me separately because I was late.
Yeah.
So I think that gave me a lot of stress and anxiety, because I felt like I was never going to be able to catch up and be good enough as everyone else in the class. So I remember, because Chinese is purely based on memorization, you have to memorize the words. So we would have this daily vocabulary test where you have to memorize a certain list of words. And you would memorize the word and maybe the sentence that comes with it, explaining how to use that word. And the teacher would either read out the word or read it out in English, and you'd have to, write it either in Chinese and the pinyin or the opposite way around. And I remember when I first did those quizzes, all of them were 9%, 10%, because even though I'm memorizing it, I didn't have a strong enough foundation to actually memorize the characters and understand what they were saying. So I remember I had to have a tutor because I couldn't, on my own time, catch up. And I remember I was in 7th grade. So this is me when I'm, 12 years old.
Yeah.
I'm studying every day in school from 9 to 3. Coming home, I'm studying from when I get home to probably like 12 a.m. And then I go to bed and I wake up at 5 a.m. again to re-memorize all the things that I probably forgot or couldn't remember before I went to bed. And then I would go to school and get like 20% on the quiz. So I think that hump was probably the most difficult hump I had to get through.
Yeah.
Once I started getting used to, so once I understood the foundation, that's when it was easier for me to learn and memorize the characters. And that's when I would get like 99%, 100% on my quizzes. And I actually ended up being top third in my class.
Yeah.
With that 1 month gap in between. So for me, I feel like that first hump was probably when I was the most depressed I've probably ever felt in my life. Because when I went to China, it's an international school, so they have an English speaking class where all the classes are taught in English, and then the Chinese section where all the classes are taught in Chinese. And I thought when I was going there that mom would automatically put me into the English section, and I only knew when I got to China that that was not going to happen. So that was already traumatic enough.
Yeah.
So I felt like for me, learning the language was a really bumpy ride. Up to the point when I finished that semester, I was okay enough to go to the classes, but getting to that point was very difficult for me.
I think that's true because we were quite older, like when we went to China, so we were already kind of used to how we were speaking in English, and we had to kind of change the way we spoke to be able to pronounce Chinese better.
And it didn't help because we got braces then too and retainers.
Yeah. But I think that's also the reason why when I speak English and when I speak Korean and when I speak Chinese, the tone of my voice changes completely.
Yeah, like mom would say when I speak English, I'm more low.
Yeah.
Like my voice is more low than when I speak Korean.
Yeah.
I can't tell the difference, but apparently that does happen.
It does because when I speak Chinese, my voice gets quite high.
Yeah.
I think it's because I'm not completely comfortable with Chinese. So I tend to speak a more higher pitch sound because I'm uncomfortable with myself. Whereas when I speak Korean, I think my voice gets lower. Maybe because I'm more comfortable with the language.
It could be, yeah. Because when I speak Korean, my voice is a little bit higher. Because obviously Korean, I'm not as good as I am in English.
Yeah.
But yeah, for sure when I speak English, my voice is lower.
Yeah, but then I don't have an accent when I speak Korean.
I do because I've learned it later.
Yeah. And mom is very happy with your accent, Sally.
Initially, she said it sounded like the southern Korean people, like people from Busan.
When you have like a dialect, yeah.
Yeah, because when you say Korean, like we're from mom, it's 엄마. But when I first like wasn't as comfortable using it, I would say 엄마. So it would be, the tone would be at a different spot than you would normally say, like
because in English we'd be like mom, we're not mom.
Yeah.
Or like mom.
Yeah.
We're like mom. It's like that because you're speaking Korean how you're speaking English.
Exactly. And then so when I was in China, so this is like the sneaky thing. So China is close enough to Korea, or they can get the satellite pings of Korean TV shows. So if you purchase like a certain satellite, you can get the Korean TV shows being broadcasted like
at the same
live,
time,
like simultaneously. So initially when like everyone was watching like Korean TV, they'd be like laughing at all these jokes, and I'm like, I don't get why you guys are laughing. Like, what's so funny? And that's because I didn't know Korean in the humor context and like TV context. I've never watched it. But because I was constantly exposed to Korean TV and like Korean television, that's when I started picking up more
the language, the context, the humor.
Yeah, like based on context.
Like you're learning more cultural language.
Yeah.
Not as much like as the formality of the language.
Yeah, so I would only know the basics, but once I started being exposed to Korean like television, but different types. So I would hear news broadcasts, and also like documentaries would come up, but also like TV shows would come up. So I was hearing a lot more variety of Korean. And I think that's when I actually picked it up the most, because when I came back from living in China, my Korean was a lot better than when I first went.
Mom used to always say, like, when I speak Korean and when I speak English, like, it doesn't sound like I grew up overseas.
Yeah.
So when I speak Korean, I just sound like normal Korean, and when I speak English, I sound English. But it doesn't sound like she put all her hard work and effort to teach me another language when I didn't sound awkward. Because she wants that sound
where when you speak Korean, she wants that like English person accent, like the whitewashed accent.
But then I would always ask Mom, isn't it better that I can speak 2 languages fluently without having an accent? And then she'd be like, no. And then I'd be like,
yeah, because now when I go to Korea, I can go out on my own and I'm fine, right? Yeah. I can communicate. I can do everything fine. Like, I bring my friends who don't speak Korean, and it's fine. I can like take them around, no problem. But if you told me to do that before I went to China, I probably would not have been able to do that.
No. But also, as you got older, because when you were young, you were quite timid and shy. As you got older, you started to gain a bit more personality, I feel.
So what Mom would say is I got puberty through my mouth.
Sally used to be so...
Do I need to tell that shot on my butt story? I don't know if you heard it.
What shot on your butt?
So, don't ask me. I was in Korea, and I like...
How can I not ask you when you say you have a shot on your butt story, and then you say don't ask? Like...
Okay, let me clarify. I always tell this to people to show how timid I was when I was younger. So it was...
I can just imagine it. Wait.
Stop. Okay. So I was feeling not well, and I don't know why the doctor suggested that I get like a shot, like, you know, like a
Korean
vaccine.
Korean people love shots and medicine.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, fine. But they're like, oh, this one has to go in your butt. And I'm like, I'm not a baby. Like, what kind of adult vaccine requires you to get it on your butt? And they're like, oh, because it's painful, your butt has more meat on it, it'll hurt less. And I'm like, okay. So I follow the nurse, right? And I obviously, you know, pull down my pants because my butt has to be out. And she gives me the shot and everything's fine. And she's like, oh, hold pressure on it because, you know, you get that with any needle that you stick in. She's like, oh, wait for 15 minutes. I'll tell you when to come out. And I'm like, okay. So I'm chilling there laying with a pad on my butt, you know, holding it down. And then, like, I'm like, when is this nurse going to come to tell me to come out? Because I've been there for like 30 minutes or something at that point. And then she comes in with a new person. I'm just laying there with my butt. And she's like, what are you still doing here? I'm like, you didn't tell me to leave. And she's like, oh, well, leave. And I'm like, okay. I left. And it's because I was so scared of the confrontation. So that's my butt shot story I tell people.
Oh my god.
To show how, like, timid and, like, not confrontational I was.
No, that's true. And then Mom used to always say, like, once you start hit puberty, you would stop talking. You wouldn't stop talking. You talk nonstop.
Yeah, so in grade 9, I think, like, grade 9, grade 10-ish, because, like, before, if we went to the grocery store and Mom would be like, do you want anything? I'd be like, no. And I, like, wouldn't say anything, even if I really wanted something. But, like, once I went into, like, grade 10, because that's when I started going to academy, right? So after school, Mom would drive me there. And the whole drive there, which was like 20 minutes long, I would summarize everything I learned in school, possibly in that 20 minutes. I would, like, talk nonstop for the 20 minutes. And Mom's like, you know, you can just take a quiet car ride. And I'm like, but that's boring, though.
Mom said she felt like her ears were bleeding. I remember.
Yeah, whenever I leave Mom, like, home, she's like, I can hear my thoughts. Because I'm not constantly bombarding her with my sounds.
Sally used to be really quiet.
Yeah, like, it was to the point where, like, people wouldn't know that I'm there.
Yeah.
Like, do you remember when I was young and I used to have nightmares? I felt bad for waking mom up in the middle of the night, so I just
So
stand in
she'd
the
just
doorway.
stand and stare at mom until she woke up with almost a heart attack and be like, oh, because Sally she used to wear this white nightgown and she used to have long hair. You can imagine it without even me saying it further. And she'd stand like that, like staring at my mom, not even at the doorway. She'd be standing in front of mom on her bed and just staring at her, like, until mom woke up. And she used to tell me she used to have legit heart attacks because Sally would not say a word.
Yeah, so I learned, oh, mom doesn't like it when I stare at her. So I found the next solution to when I had a scary dream. I would just lay on her bed, but on the foot of the bed by myself. So she would like kick me off the bed and she'd wake up because I was fed on the floor. So that's how timid I was when I was younger. Like I would not, want to bother people make a sound. Like I would
Sally
try
would
to like,
not talk to strangers at all.
no. I'm surprised I even had friends.
I think, like, now, if you look at Sally's personality now, you can't tell she was like that before, but she was the complete opposite before. Like, she used to be so silent. She used to not talk and nothing like that. And then after she went to high school, like after we got back from China and we went to high school, I think that could be a reason why too. Because you were so stressed and like
I
in
think so. I'm in
China.
an environment where I feel comfortable.
Yeah, and then you came back to Canada where you feel comfortable and you just like let it go.
A cool fun fact is when I was in China, we would have English classes, like how every school has English classes. So there's this one girl who I was friends with in grade 7, and at the end of grade 7, she's like, "Oh, I'm actually moving back to Canada in grade 8, so I won't
Oh,
see you
I
next
remember.
year." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, I hope that you're gonna do well in school over there. Blah blah blah." So I finished grade 8. Like she never told me where she was going. She just said she's going back home to Canada. So I go to high school in grade 9, and guess who I see in the hallway of my high school?
I
Same person
know.
I went to school with in China.
And then, because we went to the same high school, I saw her as well. And then I told Sally, I think I saw someone from China. Like, the world
Yeah,
is so small. Like, how can out
yeah.
of the entire Canada, we went to exactly the same school? That is crazy.
So I went up to her and I was like, Rachel, because that's her name. I was like, do you remember me? She was like, wait, who are you again? I'm like, Sally from the school
China.
name in China. And she's like, oh my god, you go to this school? And also we were in the same homeroom.
Yeah. And then after she met me, and then I met her, I'm like, Sally, I saw her. And then she stared at me and pointed at me, and I stared at her and I pointed at her too. It's like, it was
Yeah,
so
that's
weird.
that's that's when I knew like you never know when you're gonna meet people
Yeah.
because we met each other at the same time and completely around the world.
Yeah. And I actually met a friend who's Thai in my school in Canada, and she was friends with a girl that I went to school with in China.
Yeah,
So world is super, super small. It's super,
it
super
is.
small.
That was one like really good surprise that I went because when I went to the high school, we knew no one there.
But we really liked that high school the moment we stepped inside. I remember.
I did, yeah. But that was just it was at least nice to have one familiar face when I went in,
Yeah.
especially if she's in the same grade as me and same classes.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a safety net in a way.
Yeah, kind of.
But yeah.
I think high school was fun, but if if someone asked me, did you want to go back to that age again? I probably wouldn't go back.
I wouldn't for sure. Because I remember how stressed I was then.
Yeah.
Because no seventh grader should have to study that much. Like, it was insane the amount of work I had to put in just to catch up that 1 month that I lost.
Yeah. But if someone asked
And
me
not
if
to
I
mention, after that, all the classes are taught in Chinese. I had to learn freaking Newton's Law in Chinese.
Yeah, I
Like,
remember.
it's insane how much you actually have to process because you're just not learning the language, but you're learning the technicality of each of the subjects.
Yeah,
Like I
that's
had to learn
true.
history,
Me
math,
too. Mm.
biology,
Biology,
physics. Like
chemistry, physics. I did all of that in Chinese.
yeah, so it's so much that you have to be able to understand in such a short period of time.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
it's based on the curriculum there too. Like it's
Mhm.
not adjusted, right? So it was very intense. I remember that time was very difficult for me, and if people told me to go back, I would not go back.
No, I think even for like $1 million, I wouldn't go back to high school. Yeah, it's very difficult, and I really applaud people that have the guts to come out during university to try to learn a new language. I mean, props to
Yeah,
you. It takes so much hard work and effort to do that, and I seriously know what you're going through, and probably it's worse and more difficult than what we went through. Imagine how much mom had to go through when she was like 30 and she had to move to the 30 something and she
exactly.
had to move
Because
to like a new
her
country.
communication skills not only impacted her, but two other people as well.
Yeah. So, props to you, mom.
Yeah, I don't know. Because she was a lot older than when we learned both the languages. So,
Yeah. So,
it would have
mom
been
was
very
always
difficult.
up for a new challenge, and our mom's pretty awesome, guys, as you can see.
Yeah, if I
We're
tried to
not
do
just saying that
something,
because she listens to our podcast. We really, really, we mean it.
if I did, if I want to do what she did now, I don't think. Well, it's different because we have the Google Translate, but if you removed all technology from it, I don't think I would be able to do it.
If I, for some reason, was going to move back to Canada, I think I might put my kids in French immersion the moment they're like
I
young.
think it would be smart too.
But when you do French immersion, do you learn English? Like learn how to like
Yeah,
write
you have an
essays and
English
stuff
class.
in English? Okay. So
Yeah,
my future kids, you'll be going to French immersion.
I think that's smart. Yeah.
Because if you speak French, basically, it's easier for you to learn English. I mean, not English, Spanish.
Yeah, and also to work in any governmental positions in Canada, you have to know French and English.
See, we sound so Asian already. We don't even have kids, and we're like already thinking about their future job. Future kids, good luck. You're gonna have a very, very tough family. I used to always think that mom used to be so tough on us by making us do all of these things. But then I realized if I have kids, I might actually be more harsh on them than mom was. So I'm sorry, my future kids, but it's all for your future. Do you want to say goodbye?
Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed us talking about, I guess, the differences that we had in learning English and learning Chinese and Korean later on in life. You can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, but make sure you leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It just helps us find new listeners. And you can also find us on Instagram at Mixing Cultures Podcast. And you can ask us any questions you want there, and we can try to answer it in like a future Q&A video.
And maybe next episode I'll talk about how Harley and I met.
Yeah, because I actually haven't heard this story, so it would be new for me too.
Put a poll and see if anyone wants to actually know before we film it.
Yeah, because so the interesting thing is I've only met uh my Sophia's husband in person like what 2 weeks before the wedding.
Yes.
Yeah, so I've met him on a very short notice, so it's not
Not just
normally how
you,
people.
everyone in our family.
Everyone, like he's met our whole family 2 weeks before the wedding.
Okay, now our
So
family just sounds crazy. We should leave it for the episode because right now, our family just sounded bonkers for a second. So
yeah,
we
but
won't talk about it
you'll
anymore.
see why that made sense in the long run. But it is also a very interesting fact.
Yeah. So everyone, thank you very much for listening.
And enjoy the rest of your week.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.